It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Gary Archer. Gary has only had 4 jobs in his lifetime: a job doing grunt work for a cabinet maker for 3 months, a tour guide in Costa Rica for 9 months, a cashier for K-mart for a year, and an indoor soccer employee for 28 years at Let's Play Sports. He's president of that organization that owns and operates indoor soccer facilities across the U.S. with 24 locations in 10 states. The company has grown from a single location in 1986, earning less than $300,000 per year and employing about 20 people, to over $15 million in 2019, employing 300 and subcontracting an additional 500 people. Gary Archer, welcome into the corner office.
Brent, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, wow. It's great to have you here. And it's so wonderful to be able to have another C12 CEO in our program. As I think I mentioned before we got started, I think you're number 15 or 16 and growing every day. We're very excited about bringing your message about your career journey and, importantly, how Christ had an impact on that. But let's start a little bit about your early years. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Sure. No, I'll tell you, I was actually born in Pennsylvania. I don't remember much about that.
Right,
and
right.
My parents had moved me to Tucson, Arizona. I think I start remembering things right around kindergarten, but I spent most of my, I guess, would you say, formative years in Tucson, Arizona. And I think a lot going on there. My parents were very committed to me personally. My sister and I, they attended all of our sporting events, right?
Nice.
Supported us through school, all of those types of things. But I will say,
younger sister, older sister?
Oh, older by 2 years. Yeah. So, I would say the one thing is that, God wasn't a presence in our home other than my grandmother who lived with us as well. She was a devout believer and
maternal or paternal grandmother?
It's maternal. Yeah, she was maternal.
Yeah.
So
we share that story. My grandmother also was a devout believer. Incredible influence on my life.
Yeah, and I didn't know at the time that she was such an influence on my life. Right, it was one of those afterthoughts later because mostly it was grandma, I don't want to do that, and that kind of thing. So my parents didn't really force church or do anything like that.
Sure.
And Christ wasn't a central tenet in our lives. And so I just kind of drifted from there. So,
got it. Well, tell us a little bit about what your parents did. Were they professionals, gone to college, et cetera? What were their professions?
So neither of my parents actually graduated from college. I know my mom was studying to be a nurse in Georgetown University when she met my dad, but, they ended up getting married and she didn't finish that. Dad was just a consummate salesperson his whole life. He worked for, what can I remember? I remember he worked for the Chamber of Commerce selling subscriptions or business, people to enlist in the Chamber of Commerce. So he would do that. I remember driving around with him in the car and visiting different small businesses all over the country, right? Just all over, his region of Arizona and him doing, I didn't really understand what that was, but I just knew I got to hang out with my dad and we'd go fishing. Yeah, it was fun. And then my mom worked for the Bell system, right? Ma Bell and all that.
Sure.
And, eventually those things got broken up and she ended up with, she finished with a company called Quest, I think was the name of the company there. And,
one of the Seven Sisters, I think.
That's right. There you go. Right. There you go. So, she did a lot of customer service, answering the phones, dealing with customer service kind of stuff. So, I would go visit her at her office sometimes, but mostly just to grab lunch. No, I didn't really have a very good idea around what she did, at least least not as much as what my dad
Right.
did. So.
Any inspirational, memories from mom and dad in those early years, things they might have said to you or behavior that you noticed?
Only that their dedication to just making sure that we, were provided for, or, we could, if we wanted to do something like a sport or something like that, they were 100% behind us. I mean, I have, two daughters myself and a son and now a grandson. And, I look at the commitment that my parents had especially for soccer, for me, the travel, all the expense and all the things that went with it. And I look at my kids right now and think, gosh, I don't know if I have, if I could even afford that amount of time. So God bless me with two young girls, and they just, a bit of a heartbreak for me considering what we do being a soccer company, but they no interest in soccer at all.
So no interest. I was going to say, are they soccer players or they've gone the other direction?
Yeah, they completely did, which is fine with me. I just, it was the older, Clea's are older, and she played for a little bit and enjoyed it just kind of as for fun, right? Never got too committed or into it. So yeah, I thought it's, you can always tell God has a sense of humor sometimes, right? I have.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Well, when did you come to Christ, Gary, and what role did he play in your upbringing?
Oh, yeah. So very late in life, I was 29 when that actually happened. And so that's an interesting story unto itself. So I'll be brief. I was finishing, I'd never finished college. I got the opportunity to do the tour guide thing right in the middle of my college career. So I just stopped, did that, and then came and started working for the soccer company again, and was just too busy to finish college. And the company started having some troubles financially and such. And I was in Houston, and I came along because of a flood, right? Like, so let's just count the times that God was in this. And there was a flood. I got some money from a car that I wasn't expecting that got flooded, and they gave me quite a big check for that. And instead of buying a bigger, nicer car, a friend of mine had recommended that I go to college. I returned, wanting to have a private school education, because at the time I thought that was better. I didn't really know. And so I went to the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas. And this is where I met God, right? Was at this college. And I went in thinking, I'm going to do everything I can to not believe in God. I know these people are going to try and get me to believe in God, and I'm going to do everything I can to not believe in God. But, that's a fruitless.
He had other plans, it sounds like.
Absolutely true. And so I think the thing that finally pushed me over was I'd always had, I think whether you're a believer in God or not, you find some solid concepts or beliefs in your life that you kind of live your life by. And one of them that I lived my life by always had been, find people that have great qualities that you admire and hang around those types of people. But the problem with that is if you're basing that on man, then you're always going to have massive amounts of flaws. And so finding someone that's perfect is impossible. And I remember sitting this is so hilarious. I remember sitting in the college, just sitting between the library and the chapel that day. And I just remember thinking, yeah, gosh, that's a great idea. I wish I could just find somebody that didn't commit any sin and that, was perfect. And I remember thinking like, well, and this is how long it took me. I was like, well, let's go back through history. That person doesn't actually have to be alive. If I could actually study that person, that would be good. And then I'm like, Gandhi, no, Abraham Lincoln, no, just kind of going through it. I'm like, maybe I should consider this Jesus Christ guy. And so then I start considering that, and then I'm like, you know what? I think I believe in Jesus Christ. I'm going to do that. I believe in Jesus Christ. And that was it right there. And I remember that moment very particularly. I don't remember the exact time, day, that kind of thing, but you
came to it on your own, literally, just through your own. Wow.
Yeah, just deduction. And what I remember mostly too, my wife always talks about this. What I remember is how I felt. Up until that point in my life, I always felt like I had to look over my shoulder. I had so much apprehension, just a lot of things, a lot of worry in my life. And that moment, when it just released, I felt a sense of peace, and it's never left me. I mean, I think
we call that the Holy Spirit. Right?
Yeah, he came upon me that day. So,
he came on you immediately. It sounds like
I can't even fathom the difference between prior and after. And it's nice. I mean,
that's an awesome story, Barry.
It is. Yep. It was wonderful.
I love it. Well, so you said you didn't finish your college. What were you studying at that time?
I did at that time. So I came back, it was like 28 and I finished before I turned 30. So I got a bachelor's in business administration. So, though I'd been doing a lot of the work that they were training me to do anyway. So I don't think I really hate to say this about the college. They were great. It was a wonderful college. But I would say the thing I learned the most was obviously I got a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that was the biggest thing I took away from that college.
That was worthy of the investment.
Yeah, I think so too.
Were you a good student in school, high school as well as college?
Yeah, I mean, I was a great student until girls showed up, and then, and then it was just kind of like being cool. Yeah, just trying to be cool and just hanging out right about so I didn't apply myself as best as I could, but I always managed to get B's and A's. I think I just, I managed to get in there.
Well, you have a love for sports, and we'll get to that in your current career in a minute. But growing up, were you, an athlete, or did you pursue music, theater? What other types of things were you doing outside of class?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm the type of person that's like, this is good and bad, right? So if there's something I enjoy doing, I want to be really good at that something. Right. And so that limits the amount of somethings that you do when you're trying to become really good at something. And so growing up, I played baseball, I played football, and I played soccer. And that was it. Because the focus was, I just want to be as good as I possibly can. And I ended up sticking with soccer just because it was what I was best at. Now, I did do theater when I was in school. And I even took that as far as college, my first round of college, if you will. Right. And it was a choice then. The same thing, it always comes down to a choice. It's like, okay, you're on the soccer team. Here's the time and commitment you need to do that. And if you want to be in the theater group, here's the time and commitment you can do that. These things collide. Soccer has to win. You got the scholarship for that. So I ended up stopping at that point for that too.
What about entrepreneurial things? We talked a little bit about some of your earlier jobs before you got into soccer, but did you do the ubiquitous paper route or mowing lawns growing up and so forth? Was that kind of part of your spirit?
No, I think I was just a lazy sort as a child. So my parents were always so surprised at how well I took to responsibility when I finally had to have it. They were very surprised by that. They said that multiple times to me because they just thought, we just thought you're going to be that kid that was just going to be with us until you're in your 40s. And right,
failure to launch.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And so that's what they thought. But I mean, once I got my very first job, even when I was working for the cabinet place where I was just doing a bunch of grunt work, I just felt a sense of responsibility to the other people there to do my job really well. And so, I never had a lot of entrepreneurial spirit or anything like that. But I definitely had a draw towards leadership through soccer and in the roles that I had. I always kind of moved up and enjoyed being in charge. I think that was something I always enjoyed doing.
Tell us, Gary, a little bit about some of those earlier jobs, but before you got into soccer.
Yeah. So, accidentally, the first job was with K-mart, and that was just something I got through school. I was in a group called DECA, right? And you have to get a job as part of it. So I got this job at K-mart, and it definitely wasn't a primary concern for me. I was pretty responsible for it, but it seems like everything at some point in time, there was a conflict between the job and soccer, and I always chose soccer. So I remember trying to get a schedule changed or something for me because we had a state final or something that I had to go to, and nobody would switch schedules with me. So I just didn't show up to work, right? I called in and said, I'm not coming. And they ended up terminating me right there. So I was just like, choice between that and soccer. I was like, I think I'm going to take the state championship thing. So we didn't win either. So it's not like it's probably the wrong move. But
well, you had the dedication, it sounds like.
That's right.
And then you came across your current role, was it almost 30 years ago, right? When did you first get involved in Let's Play Soccer?
Yeah, I mean, the story of that really harkens back to my dad. So my dad really probably was more of an entrepreneur than I was. And he opened up an indoor soccer facility in Tucson, Arizona, because we loved playing soccer so much. And at the time, indoor soccer, actually, if you look back on it, indoor soccer itself it was an amazing professional sport for quite a few years, even rivaling the NBA, had attendance and those kinds of things that were greater than the NBA in the 70s and 80s. Wow. Anyway, so everybody in the world of soccer in the 80s, really kind of the future of soccer in the United States was indoor. And so we were always playing, but we always had to travel to Phoenix. And my dad opened up one in Tucson, Arizona. And he opened that in 1987. And my dad is an amazing salesperson. But as far as operating a business. That wasn't necessarily his strong suit. So from 1987 till about 1991, my dad did I always like to tell people, my dad did everything he did to try and run that business into the ground. And we come across this gentleman in 1991 named Tom Higginson, who's actually the founder of Let's Play Sports. And Tom comes in, he's a very candid individual, and just says, you guys really suck at running this business, but
you had the heart for it, just got the operational capabilities.
Yeah, he says but you just need some guidance on like what to do and how to do it. And I have that ability. So
now,
how
old were you at the time?
18 years old.
You were 18
when he showed up.
Okay.
Yep, I was 18 when he showed up, and he said, so he basically, and I remember having conversations very, very clearly. Remember in the living room, I could remember even the smells of talking about what things like, bankruptcy was, right? Personal family bankruptcy and what that meant and what that was going to look like and all those types of things. And I remember having these conversations. And then Tom comes along and says, look, you guys suck at this, and you did some good things right, choosing where to go, that kind of stuff. But one of the things, he's going to teach us the operations, and he said, all I'm looking for is 50% of your business to do that. And I mean, we were losing. So it's like 50% of zero.
Nothing is nothing. Yeah.
Pretty good, right? So we can do 50% of zero. So we took him up on the offer, and that was in 1991. And to his credit, he was very good at systems and operations and even sales. He formalized everything. And so it wasn't very fast. It wasn't very long. 1991 to 1994, my dad was able to fully retire. He retired.
That's awesome.
And then I started
was Tom running this franchise? I mean, was he running the operation already and you became a franchisee, or what was the relationship?
He started it bootstrap, grounds up kind of thing. Yeah, ran his own facility. Long story there, but yeah, he was already running 5 or 6 locations.
Okay, and he continued with those and then kind of helped you and your dad.
Yep, yeah. And he added us on, and he would do exactly what he did with us. He would just go find local people in a market, and he'd partner with them to run a facility, and he'd just do that in a lot of markets. And so he was pretty smart, very successful guy. I owe a lot of what I learned from him. And then I was obviously very loyal to him, because as I got older, at 18, I don't think I realized this, but I do now. Tom, very savvy in real estate, and he could have waited, right? He could have waited, and he could have picked that business up, or could have just picked the assets of the business up for, pennies on the dollar. But I don't know. He chose to help. And for that, I was forever loyal to him. And so from there, I spent pretty much the rest of my career with him, with the exception of that stint where I was in Costa Rica. And it's like, when you're 20 and you have an opportunity to be a tour guide in Costa Rica, you kind of take that opportunity, right? So, and I needed to see, right? I always felt like that the soccer thing was something that my dad did, and that, and it was expected for me to continue to do that. And, as I was such a mess when I was younger too. I mean, until I was 29, I didn't have anything straightened out. So, those are just years of darkness in my life. So bad decisions, just lots of stuff that I did wrong. But I don't know. I think the decision to go to Costa Rica was a good one. And I was there for like 9 months and realized, wow, I really do want to proceed and be part of Let's Play Sports. And so that's when I came back to the United States, and I've been working with them ever since. Right.
Now, was Tom kind of in between you and your dad's age?
Yeah, actually, he's about 20 years older than me. So, so he's 20 years my senior, and really significant mentor in my life. So especially from that point forward, once I finished up, I did a management position with him after my dad retired in 94, but that was very short, right until about 95. And then I went and did the Costa Rica thing, 94, 95. And then I came back, 9 months isn't that long. And, but it's enough to have a baby. And I was back in the United States in Houston and working with Tom. And that's when him and I really started, relationship got good.
What were some of the earliest leadership lessons you learned from Tom in those days?
Well, Tom's very unique, right? I mean, here's somebody else who didn't go to college, didn't graduate with a degree or anything like that, but super smart, super good at making the complex simple, right? He could keep things really simple, and he just had a phenomenal ability to systematize things. I mean, he ran a 300 plus properties that he owned in real estate. And he didn't even have a management company. He was smart. He did things like, okay, your rent is going to be, $3.56 and 1 penny. And my rent is going to be $3.56 and 2 pennies. And then, somewhere in the middle of the month, he'd go down to the bank, he'd get a printout, and then he'd just read it like, okay, 2, 5, 7, 6, and then he'd send out, eviction notices to the people that hadn't paid, kind of thing. So he just had a way to systematize everything and simplify it and permit costs. And that's one of the things I learned from him was just keep it simple. And then the other thing that he was really good at was stay focused on the thing that you're really, really good at. So he always was a big believer in, hey, what is the thing, way before I heard that from him, way before I ever read Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, which is you can only be the best at one thing in your life probably. And that's where you need to spend your time and focus. And for us, it was always, we're the best at soccer leagues. We're not the best at all these other things. And so the focus on figure out what can be great at, or the best in the world, you potential to do that, and do that was kind of two of the things.
So when Dad retired, then did you take over as president, or was Tom kind of in that role? How did your relationship evolve?
My dad was never president other than the facility there in Tucson. But so long story on how I became to do the role of that, right? So fast forward to 2002 is when I became a believer, and right around the time that I graduated from college. Let's Play Sports in 2000 had decided to do an IPO. It was a mess.
That was Tom's organization. Then,
yeah, Let's Play Sports is Tom was the CEO and president.
and primary owner, I presume.
Yeah, and at the time I'd been just going around. I became kind of the number two in that. Previously, anytime he opened a new location, he would go and he'd be the one to open it, hire everybody, do that. And then I had that experience when I came and I opened up the Houston store. And then I just, since I had that experience, he continuously used me for that as we were expanding and approaching an IPO in 2000. So all from 97 to 90 to 2000.
But you were his employee then, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, working directly for him. Yeah. And then by the time we do the IPO year 2000, I mean anybody that's old enough to remember, 2000 was the worst time you could possibly do an IPO. It's when the stock market completely collapsed due to the .com bubble. And so we did everything. We spent all the money, market makers, the whole 9 yards. We came out of the whole thing. It was just a total mess. And we lost a lot of money. We were struggling to survive. I remember looking back at it years later, and it was like you had to come up with we had actual cash of $30,000 every month for 5 years that we had to find that we didn't have. And he did that. Tom figured that out. So we're in the midst of that between 2000 and 2005. I'm at college thinking, I better get my degree because this thing looks like it's going down, right? The ship is going down here.
Options, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Plan.
And then I become a believer, and now I'm looking at this organization. And let me just tell you, from 1991 when I first started in the organization till 2002 when I became a believer, let me just tell you, I was part of making a culture that did not honor God at all. I mean, I was a huge contributor of that. I mean, some of the things we did were just embarrassing, right? That would make me red in the face. I would fire myself, frankly, if I was who I was now. And so
I assume Tom wasn't a believer then.
He was not. Yeah, he was not. And he had a lot of good qualities, and he just he should be a believer. I always tell people that Tom should be a believer for the ways that he acts, puts people first, just a lot of things that he does, but he just doesn't. He's had some stuff in his past, I guess, that, prevent that from happening with him, but that's the Holy Spirit's job. We'll let him work on that.
Right.
So moving forward, 2002, I'm in the organization. It's a mess. I come out of college. It's a mess. Carol, our COO, she's like, this is a mess. And she had a lot of money invested in as well. And, I'm new to this, being a believer kind of thing. And so I'm praying every day and I'm really in the Word. And I just got this sense that, this is not something that God wanted to end, and that there's a solution and that we could get it fixed. And so, I mean, that was the mission for initially, you talk about your calling and your career. I mean, I really felt called to, not let this whole thing collapse. Yeah. And so Carol and I just went on the road. We took over operations. Tom just dealt with financial and, all of that.
And now, did you go public in the end?
It completely failed. Yeah, it completely failed.
Which is probably a good thing in hindsight.
In the hindsight it is. So we floundered for that from 2000, 2005. And Carol and I went around and, it was, surprisingly really simple what it took to kind of start getting the facilities back on track and getting money coming in and those kinds of things. So we got ourselves out of the negative cash flow position in 2005. And I felt like that, yep, you know what, that's it. I'm kind of at the end of what my obligation was, here. I felt like released from that. And I thought, I looked at the position because I've always thought I wanted to be the president up until 2000 and then, until 2002. And I looked at the position and thought, I can't do it because I thought I had to do it the way Tom did it. And Tom is amazing individual, right? Like, but back to the whole, hey, you put somebody on a pedestal and there's flaws in their life. So he's not perfect. Right. And I was thinking, gosh, I just don't want to become that, right? There's some things in his personal life and those kinds of things that I was just like, relationships with family members and stuff. I just couldn't do it. And then I had trouble saying, how do I I felt really, duplicitous facing into an organization of culture that I helped create that was a mess. And so I just turned and said, God, I don't think I'm called to do this. And I started even looking at becoming, my wife was an Episcopalian, and so Anglican church, and looking at, you can be married as a priest there. So I wasn't Catholic. And so I was looking at even becoming serving in the church. And I believed that lie for a while, that if you really wanted to serve God, to be a super Christian, you had to do that in the church or be a missionary or something along those lines. And I believed that. And then God straightened me out. In 2006, I listened to a podcast from a graduation ceremony for Abilene Christian University. And this gentleman was a CEO of a company, and I think it was Mac Tools, I think. And he just explained how he kind of came to the same point that I did in his career, where he was a Christian and he was working for this organization. He felt like, now he was a little bit smarter than me. He at least knew that he could stay in business, because he thought he had to go work for like a Chick-fil-A or somebody that would honor God. And then God just basically made it real clear to him was, I put you in this position for a reason, and I expect you to use this position to honor me somehow. And it was like, I remember exactly where I was when I listened to that. I was at the Austin airport driving there to pick somebody up or something in my car, and I'm listening to this, and I just was like, that's the answer. I'm supposed to be the president. And so in 2006, if you'd asked me before I listened to that podcast, Tom had come to me and said, would you, be interested in being the president? I'd have told him no. Listen to the podcast. Sure enough, 2007, the very next year, Tom comes to me and says, hey, I'm interested in transitioning. I just don't have anything left after this whole IPO mess and everything like that. I'm just burnt and I need to retire. And so from 2007, 2011, we worked on a transition, and then officially took over in 2011, like on the, you have to, it's a C corporation, right? So you have to announce it and do all this. But in 2009, I was probably running most of the organization by 2009. So my footprint, or my thumbprint on the organization, really starts in 2009. Officially, I became the CEO in 2011.
Tell me about the first steps you started to take as you wanted to and tried to, or were successful in, obviously, ultimately integrating Christ into the business.
Yeah, that's a great story. So C12 was just a huge help in this particular area. So
when did you become a member of C12?
2011 was I went to in November, I went to my first 2010 November, I went to a first meeting, but I didn't actually become a member until 2011. So,
and just for those of you that are listening that don't know C12 is a peer advisory group for Christian business owners, kind of a Vistage plus Christ, as my chairman says. Yeah. And I've been a member since October of 17. So you trumped me by a few years there.
There you go.
But it's had such a major impact on so many men and women that own their businesses and really want to live that out in the marketplace. So that's awesome. You got involved. How did you find out about C12?
Well, so that's a God story unto itself. In 2006, I get this call through this podcast to say, hey, I want you to do this. But just, I always look at David when he got called and was anointed to be king versus when it actually happened. Like there's a gap there. And then is the other thing. And so from 2006 to 2010, I just floundered. I had no idea, right? I was like, God, I know you want me to do something, but what am I supposed to do? And I couldn't get any traction anywhere. And I always read, there's only two magazines I've ever read, right? One was Fortune and the other one was Harvard Business Review. And I was in those back, I was just desperately in the back part of it, like where all the little business card ads and those types of things are. I don't know why. And I came across the C12 ad, and it just said something like, are you having trouble aligning your faith and your work? And I'm like, yes, yes, I am. Like,
Good
we
question.
Can help you with that. Yeah, we can help you with that. And they swear, you go ask them, they'll say, we've never advertised in those two magazines. So I don't know what you're talking about, but I saw it. I don't know what. Anyway, so I joined C12 in 2011, and you would think problem solved there, but still no.
Take some work.
I couldn't. And then in 2012, I think my board was fed up with all the excuses that I had continuously put forth on, my organization, I report to a board of directors. The organization was founded as non-Christian, right? Like they didn't sign up for this. All the shareholders, all that type of stuff. This is not what they signed up for. A lot of the people that were around me and my board were either founders or they were 100% owners of their organization. Sure. So it's like, you want to make you're Christian, you could do that. Just go ahead, right? And so I struggled, with that and a lot of fear there. But the reality is, it was just lies, and I could do something. I couldn't do, everything, but I could do something. And one of the guys finally said, look, I'm so sick of hearing what you can't do. He's like, look, 2012, Barney Randall says, I want you to put a deliverable this month, that you make a commitment this month to us that you will officially let everybody know where you stand when it comes to belief, right? You find a way
your
to
C12
do that.
Chair?
No, he was just a member. He was just one of the members. Yeah, he's just a member, and just wise guy, right? He was just a super wise guy. And anyway, so he made me make that commitment. And the thing that I realized is it was real easy for me. I prayed for everybody in the organization. I had the list of all of the employees, and I would just pray over them 3-4 a day, something like that. And I realized, you know what? I should just ask them if they have something that they would like prayer on. And that does two things. One, it basically notifies everybody that, holy cow, look at Gary's Christian. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of coming out of the closet, right? Yeah. He's coming out of the closet with that. And so, and I would love to say, it sounds so simple, right? Just send an email to everybody in your organization, including your, not the customers, but to the, also to our vendors. Right. But it sounds so simple, but it was really hard for me. And I mean, we met like on Wednesdays, and I swear I sent that email on Tuesday night just so I would make the commitment that I made to them. But it was a lot of fear, and it was a very simple email. It's just like, hey, I pray for everybody. Just thinking if there was something you would like prayer on, please just email me and let me know. I'm not trying to like convert you into coming in my religion. I pray because I care for you, and that's how I show that I care. So if you would, please just send me things. And it was really cool. I was fearful that I would get a lot of pushback from people like, oh, you're trying to make this a Christian organization, and are you gonna push out people that aren't Christian, and I did eventually deal with that, but in the beginning it was just an overwhelming response of prayer.
You probably took them by surprise more than anything else.
Well, yeah, and they were, I mean, the stuff they were sending me was so personal, so intimate, great. Just their prayer requests were amazing, and then some of the ones that hurt were like, wow, I didn't even know you were a Christian, right? Like, a lot of those, and so a lot of prayer going on there. But I mean, eventually, I did have to face into that pushback, but not at that moment. It was just overwhelming affirmation that this was the right thing to do. And
had you bought Tom out by that stage, or were you on kind of a payout plan? Or
there's nothing. There are 75 shareholders in the organization because we did the IPO thing. So everybody's still kind of status quo as to we just have all those shareholders, and Tom's one of them, and so am I. So no.
So you're an elected representative, not a full owner in that respect.
That's right. That's right. And so Mike Sharrow, who was not the CEO of C12 at the time, he was just my chair. And he had said, well, what are you afraid of? Like, why are you afraid to even take a step? And I thought, it's because I don't want to lose my job. And I'm like, wait, and that makes no sense because God appointed me to this job. So I'm just like, yeah, you're right. That's just stupid. And so then I sent the email, and then it just snowballed from there. I mean, we've done quite a few things since then, but it really was the email that kind of triggered everything.
Yeah. How would you say your leadership styles evolved over time, Gary?
I think the biggest difference between it really is just about that transformation and becoming more and more Christ-like, right? Just kind of trying to be more and more like him. And the thing that I noticed early on in my career was, we got to get this stuff done, right? That's what we need to do, guys. Like, in order to win, we have these number of tasks to achieve. We achieve those tasks, we win, get it done. And anything else, waste of time, right? If we're not doing the task, you're not talking to me about the task, you're not giving me, that's a waste of time. Let's move forward, right? So very task-oriented leader. And then once I became a believer, what I realized right away was Jesus Christ was about relationship, right? He was wanting to have a relationship with me. He was always in relationship, going to parties, doing stuff, just building relationships all the time, right? And I realized, like, holy cow, and then it talks about in the Bible about what's gonna exist at the end of time, right? Everything's gonna burn up, and what is gonna still be there? And I thought to myself, like, relationships are still gonna be. I mean, I have a relationship with Christ and relationship with the people that that'll still be here. And so it's like, okay, I need to really invest in relationships. And that's when it twisted for me. So instead of here's the stuff we need to get done, it's like, who can we get things done through, and what's the best way to do it? So I became less focused on tasks and more focused on people at that point in time.
That's great. I love that. And how many employees today in the organization?
Well, I would say we have about, we're a seasonal business. We get really busy in the winter, but
W-2 and 1099.
Yeah. So we have both. And so W-2 probably bounces around between 100 to 200, somewhere in that ballpark. Right. And then you have the 1099, or actually they're not even 1099. They're paid. The referees and scorekeepers are actually paid by the teams. So those guys are all, but that's probably another 500 right there, somewhere in there.
And how many facilities now?
24 locations. Awesome. Yeah, 24 locations.
And still expanding.
Yeah, we were always looking for something. So,
what would you say is unusual or perhaps unique about Let's Play Sports? Is it Let's Play Sports or Let's Play Soccer? How do you refer to it?
Let's Play Sports. Let's Play Sports. Yeah.
What would you say is unique about or unusual about your culture?
Well, I mean, I think, nowadays, a lot of the culture actually still flows from Tom, right? So one of our values is like kind of do the right thing, even if it hurts. Like we live by that value. I mean, I can't tell you how many things that would have been so much more beneficial for me. And just recently, even some insurance that, we had insurance broker come back, and I already, I always get competitive beds every year. And this guy comes back, and I always tell him, hey, I'm not moving unless you can make a difference by about 10,000. We pay a lot of money in liability insurance every year. Right. So if you're not moving the dial by more than 10,000, then don't even bother. He comes back to me and just, okay, we can't do it. We're, nah. And then I call the other guy and I go, okay, bind it, right? Bind it. We're going to go with you guys. Guy calls me back 5 minutes later. Oh, I messed up on your thing. It's a $20,000 difference or a $30,000 difference. And I'm just like, whoa, I just said the words, bind it, and I'm just like, so I, a little bit tempted. I hang up the call my C12 chair and just went, hey, Dan, man, I just had this situation happen. And, I mean, it's like minutes. So, I mean, I could save the company $30,000. That seems like that's good for, that's a good stewardship move. But, I told the guy, bind it. And then Dan said, this is great. He's great. Great chair. He says, well, I guess there's only one question to ask. And I go, what is that? And he goes, what is Gary Archer's word worth? And I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and eat the $30,000. And, so we stayed with the other guy, but that's stuff I can give you story after story after story of Tom. He lived that as well. He did that. That's right. And then I'd say the imprint that, we've recently, that isn't necessarily coming from Tom, that came from Tom, and that's unique. I don't see that in a lot of other cultures. Like, I've just seen a lot of just really negative things. But Tom's always been about putting others first, putting the organization first. That's from him. But as far as us goes, like the imprint that like Carol and this next generation of leadership has put on the organization and the culture wise is, I mean, we really do. We care. We care a lot for our employees. There's a lot of things that we do. I think a lot that they don't even know that we do for employees. There's just so much that we've because a lot has to do with the prayer, right? They're letting us into their personal lives, and we're able to. Do you do that on a regular basis? Or are you still asking for prayer requests? Oh yeah, I pray. So that evolved into we send out a request once a week. That's kind of automated, but we pray twice a day. So we have corporate prayer 8 a.m. in the morning Central Time and 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And everybody just picks an employee and we look at the requests and we just all kind of pray based on how we're led. So, yep. Cool.
What do you look for, Gary, when you're making bets on the people you invest in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have now gotten, there's a hiring process that I use now that is just so honed in. It's amazing. And so there's only 3 components that I'm looking for besides the culture fit, right? That's a big one. And that's a big one. And we have a way of measuring that. We even have a test that we give people to measure our culture. So number one, do their values match our values, right? Because they could be an all-star, they could be a Harvard graduate and their values don't match our values and they're going to be bad for the organization. So that's number one. And then when you look at skills, right, there's only 3 skills I look for the people that work for me. And it's just like, sales, how well do you manage and lead people? And the last one is just, have you dealt with like any kind of operational event planning, those kinds of things. And those are typically what I look for.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Gary, you've been very gracious with your time and we're almost out of it, but I did want to ask one last question. We ask all the CEOs that have attended and that or featured rather. And that's kind of what career and life advice would you give to someone that maybe has their eyes on the corner office themselves someday?
Yeah. Oh, I think what I said earlier, which was, think about, I tell this to my children, relationships are the currency of heaven. That's what I tell my kids. Relationships are the currency of heaven. And if you're going to spend your time someplace, that's an investment always. And so spend your time in that, right? So, yeah. And then the last one, this one just came to me through some reading the other day. And that was, this gentleman, actually it was Matthew Henry from his, commentary. And he had said this, those who are the most eager for authority are the least able to understand its obligations, right? And I'm like, and it went by really quick because I listened to it on audio and I went, wait a second, that's a lot in there. Those who are most eager for authority are the least able to understand its obligations. And so it just reminds me, God put you, if you're a leader, God put you in that position. and there's a reason he did it, and you got to seek that reason, not your own, right? So if you're seeking what you're seeking to become a leader, you better check why you're seeking to be there. So figure out why you're there. And if it's about God, he put you there for a reason. Seek him and he'll give you the answer.
Amen. Well, Gary Archer, president of Let's Play Sports, thank you so much for sharing your career journey and importantly, how Christ played a role in your success at Let's Play Sports.
Oh, yeah. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.